What's up, everybody? It's another Mundane Monday with Ballbreakers Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube. Here's Floppy Rock.
Thanks, Trout. It feels wonderful in here. Back in the stew on Sunday. Back on schedule. Orange lights are on. Lights are shining on us, and we are back. Chris, how are we today?
Doing great. If you didn't know, shrimp's heart is located in its head.
I actually did not know that.
I did not know that. Okay. Does that mean the brain's located in its head too, or that's all we got?
Just do with that info as you may.
Okay. All right. How we doing? How we doing with the week?
Week's going good. Start coaching on Tuesday. Baseball starts.
Oh.
I'm excited about that. It's nice because I'll have experience with baseball, even though the MLB is probably not going to start for, the first half of the season because of the lockout. So I'm looking forward to it.
Going over to our other baseball coach, Doc.
Yeah.
How we feeling?
I'm all right.
Anything you want to talk about?
No.
All right.
I just really wanted a cold brew coffee today with cold foam, and it's turned into a disaster. But I'm over it now. I'm good.
And like a minute.
I don't think you're over
I'm
it,
not, but I'm good.
In like
I'm
a
not
minute.
going to bring my problems into our listeners' world.
I want you to. In like a minute.
No, it's okay.
No, in a minute, I want you to explain the fiasco.
So I went to Dunkin'. I was craving a nice coffee. It was a little cranky this morning. I ordered the new salted caramel cold brew with cold foam. I pull up to the window. They give me this contraption. I don't even know what it is.
Want to show it to the camera?
Yeah.
It looks like milk.
It looks like milk. And it says cold brew on it. And then I said, hey, this isn't what I asked for. I wanted a cold brew with the cold foam. She said, okay. I hand her the coffee. She hands me back the same exact coffee just with cold foam on it. So then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with it. I went to another Dunkin'. They sold out, whatever that means. And now I'm here.
So what would you have done with that coffee had they had the cold brew?
I would have threw it out.
Okay.
Right in front of the other Dunkin's employee's face. Like, this is what I think about your rival, and just throw it on the ground.
How you feeling, Earl?
I'm feeling good. I'm a free agent. I quit my job.
Ooh, we've been there before on this pod.
Congratulations.
But let me just lay you guys to land, right? Do you guys ever think that the supervillain in a movie ever likes his life? Do you ever, unless he wins, obviously, but he really doesn't. That's the point of a superhero movie. You always lose, but you're a dick the whole time.
But does the superhero truly like his life too, or her life?
But that's not the point. You're not grasping it here already.
All right.
If you think about it, right, a villain, his whole purpose is to just ruin the day. But he's probably never happy, right? Because he just wants to ruin people's day, and there's a guy or a woman, whoever the case, a he, they, she, and they're just not letting him win. But every day I went to work, I felt like the supervillain. And I worked in a call center. My job was to inform people about their dental benefits and shit like that. But every day I get on the phone, I'm the supervillain. So one thing that stood out to me, this girl calls me and she's like, hey, I have to get new dentures before 5 years is up because I had cancer, so my gums shrink and shit like that. And I was like, well, listen, we can't give you any more money, and basically you're fucked. And that's the extent of every call. And I'm a supervillain.
And you're her experience with the company and with dental insurance.
Yeah, and what
the worst part.
And just the main thing, after you deal with so many negative experiences, eventually you become negative, right? Like we always said, you are the company you keep, or whatever energy you surround yourself with, and it engulfs you, you become that. And after a while, I was like, do I really want to be this forever? And I get it. Some people can do it. If you're a callous person, sure, let's just, fuck off. You owe me this much money. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, it's it's not for me. So, here I am. I'm a full-time podcaster, social media influencer, Earl.
Nice.
It's good that you got out of a toxic situation.
Not for me. Not for me. Maybe for someone, not for me.
I don't think that job really is for anyone. You think so? What would there be a certain person that would enjoy that job?
So
someone that just has no emotion, basically.
I will say there are good calls. But for every like 2 good calls, there's probably 10 bad ones. And if you think about it, you don't call your insurance company to say, thank you guys so much, this is going great.
Mm-hmm.
You only call your insurance company to like berate the person on the other side of the phone. And I'm not like saying like like I said, not everyone. But realistically speaking, you call your insurance company, yo, I got an x-ray, you guys didn't pay any money. And I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Most of the time, there's nothing you can do either, which is the worst part.
Yeah, so
You kind of just tell them, like, yeah, you're beat.
I just don't want to be like one of those people that after a while I'm working and I just hate my life because this is what I do. And I'm still young. I don't have a family. I don't have a house bill to pay or an apartment bill or I don't even have a car payment. My car is paid off. So I don't have to get going, basically.
No, you don't have to get started.
No, you can take your time to find a new job.
Yeah, this is one of those times where you take that time to self-reflect, to then see what you want, but then even then you probably won't know for sure. Nobody knows for sure.
Who knows? My options are all open. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I will become a NASCAR driver. The world is my fucking oyster.
What you just said right there is key. What my options are open. That's how I like to try to attack each day, is not cornering myself and keeping options open.
Kind of what I'm saying. I'm not 50 years old, or even I'm not 35 years old. I don't have a kid. I don't have a family. I have a girlfriend, not my wife. Like, I don't have to provide for her, or I guess provide for myself. Luckily, my mom's cool people. You know, she helps me out a lot with stuff. Not really like monetarily, but other shit. I have a house, a roof on my head, so I'm not stressed, but I still feel the stress.
Well, yeah,
that makes sense.
I would think.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you guys think it's because of uncertainty?
Yeah. Like, I wake up, I'm obviously in the same situation, and I'll wake up in the morning just like, damn, I don't have a job, pretty much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I'll think of all the things. I'm like, I'm young, I live at home still, like, I'll figure it out, basically. You know, and I'm going to start applying to jobs that I think that I'll like, and that's
It's such a weird conundrum. Like, the clock isn't ticking, but it also never stops.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and
if that makes sense, like, let me say it again. Like, the clock's.
Well, time's forever.
That's
man.
what I'm saying. Like, we're not in a rush, but at the same time, you are.
But time is a
so
social
weird.
construct, so it's a theory, basically.
But it's always ticking.
Always.
Forever.
You know what I come to realize? Somebody said this to me one day, and I repeat myself. Like, anyone who knows me, they may have heard me say this. They may have heard me say this before, but somebody once told me, it was back in my first career job at Mass Mutual. They said, well, what happens is when you're in elementary school, you go to middle school. When you're in middle school, you go to high school. High school, you go to college. College, you go to career. And then career, then like what? You know what I mean? Because then you start thinking to yourself, all right, like, I've had tasks my entire life. It's been structured, and now I have to start structuring it myself. And then that's where, like, all that uncertainty comes in. Because, like, you got to start thinking of, that's where, like, you start.
I think after career comes retirement.
If
Or
that's
what
your
about,
goal.
like, moving up in the company that you're with? Like, you know, start as a...
But it depends on the company, right? There's a lot of
Right.
companies where there's ceilings, you know?
Well, and if you were a sales representative, that's just that you're it.
Right,
Most
and
of the time.
and there's a lot, and I would assume that wasn't Earl's. I would assume that first career you weren't like fully committed on that being your career. It was more so like an experience, right?
Well, the way I looked at it, my degree is in health science. I'd like to work in like health administration, or in this case, I was working for a health insurance and dental insurance company, and there is a lot of upwards mobility in the company. They literally map you out like a career architecture. So you start as like a band 1 employee, and that's where you're like in a customer facing role. You're dealing all day with customers, phone calls. By year 2, you have the opportunity to advance. You become a band 2 in the system. I think there's like 7 bands or whatever. And then, you know, your customer facing role gets diminished, and not so much, but you would start working on like a dedicated call team. So after a while, I'd only take AT&T customers, right, or something like that. Whoever's employed in AT&T, I'll just take their calls, and then basically your calls get diminished by half. And then by the time you're a band 3, you're training other people, and you're only taking like half again now of the phone calls you were taking originally. And then you just keep moving up and up and up and up. Like, the guy that was my manager worked there for 40 years. He doesn't talk to one customer. And like, it's cool. I don't know at what point did he stop taking phone calls or whatever the case, but there's a lot of upwards mobility, but you just have to understand what you have to do to get there. And I was just like, nah, I'm good.
A whole year of doing that just probably sounded
Yeah, and I worked there I started training the end of December or the beginning of December. I got done my training class like January, a little bit after. No, it was like after Martin Luther King Day, I think, was my last day of training. And then I only worked there, what is it now, March? I worked there 2 months then, I guess, like on the floor by myself on my own. And I took like 5,000 calls. Like, let's say
sounds like a lot.
Let's say 4,000 of just berating me.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's
Right.
a tough gig. So so now taking a step back, you're out of the career. What's something that you would value in your next career? Like, what's one thing for sure that you saw from this career that you won't want in the next or would still want?
So we'll rewind a little bit. I took the job because, to my understanding, we'd be helping people. And that's what I like to do. I like to help people. That's when you're working in a field like I graduated in healthcare, basically, your whole purpose is I want to help somehow or another. And this job just wasn't that. Like I wasn't helping people. Instead, I was just telling them bad news.
You were following the contract basically that was laid out.
I wasn't helping people, and essentially that's what I want to do. I'd still love to be in a customer facing role, but only if I benefit those who need me. Like, for example, if you're a nurse, people come in and they have all these health related problems, you help them, and
Right.
It's not always customer facing roles shouldn't always be negative. They can definitely be positive. And that's what I'd like.
Okay.
Like, I'd rather just help people at the end of the day. So.
Because when I was in between careers, the first thing I asked myself was, why did I hate this so much? So I tried to decipher each one. So that first career was commission. It was make your own schedule. I'm not really for that. I feel like, and you've had this experience too, Chris, but like I wasn't for that because I kind of like a structured schedule to where I can get some decompression time. So I valued that. And then I also simplified it to valuing my coworkers and location. And where I kind of took a step back and realized that the goal wasn't, like, for my career, wasn't as important to me. It was more so if everyone at that job had the same goal to, like, progress as a team. That's kind of what I value in my next career or current career.
So you're saying just because it was basically all you and all your decisions, you made your schedule, you made your own commissions. It wasn't like a team thing.
Oh no,
That
it
kind
was.
of turned you off.
There definitely was a team aspect to that job. That was more so just a personal point of, like, for example, when you're on call, you never know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. And I don't want to be on call if I'm at a dinner, if I'm out enjoying myself. I would prefer to be, like, off. But also at the same time, like, if I have,
Right.
like, if there was, like, an interest, like, for example, we're podcasting now, like, we maneuver our schedule every now and then, but for the most part, we have a good strict schedule. You know what I mean? But, like, technically, we wanted to, we can make our own schedule and, like, move around and whatnot, but it's very flexible as opposed to always being on call 24/7. So I was like, all right, that's something that I won't value in my next job.
Right. Yeah, work-life balance is just very important.
But that was a specific piece. I tried to break it down with that and make a decision for each one to, like, what career would give me that balance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
No, it makes
either.
sense. I mean, my schedule it's also ties into it. I was working 12:30 to 9, and just think about that.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
That's awful. And my girlfriend is a teacher. She works until 3 o'clock, let's say, give or take, right? She can leave the school at any time between 2:45 and 5 o'clock. But either way, I get done work, and she's just, like, she wants me to be her boyfriend. And I'm like, well, I can't. I fucking work until 9 o'clock. I work this awful shift. So there's a lot of factors that came into it, but at the end of the day, the ultimate reason why I just didn't like it is I can't deal in negative experiences all day long, because after a while I was already starting to feel the heat of, like, it's kind of ruining all of my other relationships too, because I'm just miserable, because everyone I talk to all day is miserable.
Right.
So
You guys, as part of this pod, you guys have seen me being on that couch not wanting to talk at all.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it definitely, and that's part of the value too, is will this job have negative relations outside of my work? And that's one of the biggest parts of it, because those were the people who were around you and supported you your entire life. So why burn those bridges?
Yeah, and at this point in our life, we're so young. We are. I mean, 24, 25, 26 years old. It might not seem it, but we are. Our whole life is ahead of us.
You know what's hard? You know what's the two hardest words? Even if you want nothing to do with that job, is I quit. And there's something about those where it'll still stay. Even if you hate that job with a passion, was there still something in you where it's like, man, that like felt like I kind of gave up on something too fast, or you're unsure?
Well, yeah. I mean, and me and my supervisor or manager, whatever you want to call him, me and him were super cool. And I told him, this might not be for me. And he tried to talk me down and say, "Are you sure you gave yourself enough time to acclimate to the position?" And, and then, yeah, I'm sure it does suck. I don't know how many jobs you guys have quit. I never quit on like this sort of level. Like I've quit high school kid jobs and stuff, but
do you think it's somewhat treated the same though?
What do you mean? Well, it's different though, because this time around I'm working for an actual corporation. Like this is something that potentially is somebody else's career. So of course I want to be more professional about it. Like when I worked at the mall, I just told them like, "Yo guys, I'm out. This is my last day." And they're just like, "All right, thank you." But now this time, because what are the odds I end up at the same company 10 years down the line? I don't want to fuck that up. I don't want to burn any bridges that are possibly still able to be crossed eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is different when you're quitting jobs in your 20s and, I guess like 20 plus.
Or before 20.
Yeah. Because you still want to keep your options open eventually down the line. Now, what if I go back to school and I turn out to be like the best human resources representative of all time, and I might end up at the same company, but they're like, "Hey, you told us to go fuck ourselves. Remember that?" So, yeah, I don't want to do that.
So you have to formally resign.
Yeah. I wrote like a resignation letter, all that stuff. Keep this on file.
Right. I had to do the same as well because I potentially want to work within the same company still. So, I just resigned from that role.
Yeah.
Just keep it professional. It is tough, though. It's tough to quit a job, especially because it's a corporate job, basically. And that's just me personally. Like, I not that I felt weird. It was just like a tough decision.
It's fun. I don't know if you had this, Chris, but I just had like a weight off my chest feeling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There's a weight off your chest, but then I think I hear what you're saying. Just like you're still kind of like thinking about it because like there's still like that negative of like unsure of what you're going to be doing.
So I
right?
text you guys and I'm like, yeah, well, I already know how this goes. Though I've watched enough TV and had enough experience in my own life where, sure, I'm not working, and it's so great right now. I'm just happy. Like I don't have to work my 80 hours every 2 weeks or shit like that. But then I'm gonna hate it next week when I'm supposed to get my paycheck and I don't get paid. That's the worst part. But then it's all about just finding what's right for you. I mean, is this job worth this amount of money?
I think when people quit, like, for example, something such as a corporate structure, like there is that feeling of, because I felt it, I had that feeling of, man, like what am I going to be good at? Like what is going to suit me?
It can be demoralizing. On top of being a hard decision, you can kind of like. I went through a little period of time of just thinking I wasn't good at this job, and like you said, it's kind of like, well, this is kind of what I wanted to do, so what am I going to be good at?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, you're like, if I quit, I basically failed at that job, and that's not a good feeling.
I say that all the time. Yeah, I'm like, as my first career, I failed, and they're like, you didn't fail, you experienced. Like, no, I failed, but I realized
in all reality, you failed. Yeah. I failed. It is what it is. I don't feel terrible about it, but at the same time, it's not like I feel good about failing at a job.
It's a weird. Right now in my life, in my own mental capacity and space and physical, I guess I'm just in like a weird limbo state where I don't know what I am. Yeah,
I am in the exact same state, and it can be weird.
Like in your own mental state, like, am I happy I quit my job, or am I demoralized, or like, am I feeling like a failure, or do I feel successful because I didn't want to stay in a miserable job? Like, it's weird.
It really is.
There's a lot of, like Rocco said, I guess if this fits, but it's a lot of uncertainty of my own emotions as far as what I'm doing now.
Dude, the uncertainty aspect can go in so many. This is where you're kind of grinding to shape your identity or your beliefs, because you have an identity in terms of how you act or your personality, But what you want, this is where like that kind of starts getting shaped, right? Because like you experience something and there's millions of different other combinations of experiencing a career. And then this is where it's kind of going to shape out to say, all right, what are the pros and cons that are going to be a good balance for me? Because I think there are not a ton, I think it's a minority, but I think there's a ton of people that do look for that dream job, that dream work environment, when the reality is, I don't know if there really is that. You know, there's always going to be cons. It's just selecting which cons are tolerable to you.
Right. That was a good way to put it. I agree. It is tough, though. It really is.
Also, there's something that was said before, right? We were talking about being a failure. Like, you know, just like when you say
I'm
the
a
words
failure.
like,
You're
no,
right.
no, not you. Just
No, I
anyone.
am. Yeah, just keep going.
I'm a failure too.
Yeah,
Are you a
exactly.
failure?
I mean, what have I won at?
That's what I'm saying. So
I
here's
haven't won at anything yet.
so here's the thing.
There you go.
There's this narrative, right? When you quit, you're the failure, but you like I don't think people think of it from the reverse point of view, especially now when there's so many needs for jobs. Like if anything, could be companies looking at themselves saying, "Man, we need guys, but they just don't want to be on board. Like we got to figure out a way to make this company more enjoyable." Like I think that there is a good shape coming into all this unemployment right now, or at least I think. But I think people are too hard on themselves for saying they fail, when in reality, maybe the company, who was also started by a person just like you guys, may have just lost track of it one day and not have it organized the right way and put you guys not in the best position to succeed, or at least be engaged to the job.
Yeah, I mean, you're just trying to like find some kind of positive without it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like maybe the company takes something from Earl leaving. Like, we have to do this differently for this position.
You want to know something else that really I thought about for a while? Was that our training class started with 23 people, and the day I quit, there was only 7 of us left. So meaning 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to
Right.
say that I'm like I'm a follower and I was like I just quit because obviously it sucked, but it did factor in as well. Like if this however many people, how many is that? Like 8? No, more than that. I don't know. I'm not good at fucking math, man. Don't make fun
I know.
of me.
No, I know. I know what you mean.
But yeah, like if that many people were like this shit sucks, and I was thinking to myself, well, at first when I saw it that there was only X amount of people left, I thought, you know, this is cool. I'm toughing it out. Like, you know, this means more room for me. But then I was like, wait a second. I think I'm seeing why they also left.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
Right.
But there's also it also could be treated as like difficulty for the job. Like it depends on how you value that job. You know.
Yeah. And I will say this to anyone. I mean, while we're talking on lowly about this, it's if it's not for you, it's not for you, and you don't have to make it work. I mean, granted, you're our age, listening, probably, maybe close. Fuck it. If you're 60 years old and you're approaching retirement and you hate your fucking job, why are you there? If you go to work every day, you come home, you kick your boots off, your dog's in your way, you might give him a little nudge. Why are you at your job?
I disagree with some of that though. I feel like sometimes people do put the dark cloud over themselves and make it seem like they hate their job more than what it really is.
But that's just the thing.
That's
If you-
even more of a reason to not do it.
If
Like,
you hate,
why, though?
if you hate your job, would you ever willingly walk on a bed of nails?
Yes.
No.
No.
That's the thing.
No,
like, what would
probably
you
not.
would you ever willingly do something to make yourself unhappy? And sure, there's
Sometimes,
money.
yeah.
There's money involved, and you need to make your money, and you need to make ends meet. And if that's the case,
You would, yeah.
you
I agree
can
with
you can always look for something else. At this point in life, there are so many jobs. At this point, at any point in your life, there's no point in to be miserable. And if you want to quit your job, fuck your job.
I agree with your point. I just do think that there is another side of it, that there are people out there with a pretty good situation that just don't look at it that way, and it's automatically bringing them down. I think people get content and entitled sometimes over time.
I would say so. What about you, Doc? We don't want to go into college again.
Listen, I can't really relate to anything you guys are saying yet, so
Why not?
because I'm going to be an 8th year college student.
Yeah, but
And
have
I've
you?
never quit a job.
That's good.
Well, I have, but not like also like an FU type thing.
Do you enjoy your routine right now?
No,
What's your least favorite part about it?
school.
Okay. Is that the stepping stone to your potential next step, though?
Sadly,
Right. So, I
Yeah.
mean, Right. It's right, but that it's hard to link that to your career. I know what you mean. Like
My thing is
you're
that,
in a
like,
limbo
I've said
more
this
than
before.
anyone.
Is like I have no idea if I'm going to like my job once I get out of school and get a teaching position. How do I know if I like teaching if I've never done it?
That can be
And that's
pretty
where I start
anxiety-inducing,
thinking
right?
about it. Yeah.
yeah.
And then it's like, well, I just went to school for 8 years for nothing. You know, if that ever happens, I'm not saying it will, but
No.
it
And
could.
And it sucks with
It's very
your
possible.
your degree is such a niche
It's one thing.
Like my finance degree can be X
Yeah.
amount of jobs.
Exactly, and that's what sucks. And then I'd have to go and take other classes to get a degree and
like you
another
don't
health. Like,
end with a teaching degree and then say I'm going to go be a
no.
financial advisor. Nah,
I end
right,
with
yeah.
a health and physical education degree, which is just for health and physical education teaching.
You have a couple routes though with that. Like obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say it's as diverse as other degrees, but like you could do some education on training and like maybe become a training coach,
No,
something like that.
Because then you'd
No,
also
I'd
have to
have-
go back to college to get your BOC,
Yeah.
and you'd have to get
Oh, there's a lot of
certified.
there's a
certifications
lot of certification.
And some of those athletic training certifications, you can't even take the test unless you have a degree from an accredited college.
yeah,
Because I looked into it.
Would that be something you do like one class a summer while you're in teaching?
I mean, I could, but do I ever want to go back to school once I get? No, I don't. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
certifications I can get to, like, to do
become
different
like
things.
a personal trainer, you mean, or
No.
He's saying like other certifications for other careers, I think, right?
Yeah, like my one advisor tried to get me to go down a whole different path last year, and I was just like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not taking more classes for something I've never even thought about. You know?
You could foreshadow paths to maybe different certifications and whatnot, and then reflect on them a day or two and say, you know what, there's no point to go down this, but there
No.
could be one that's worth
If
it.
I do anything, it's gonna join the military.
or be a respiratory therapist?
Nope.
You don't want to do that?
And I don't want to go to a whole 2 years of schooling to learn about things I don't want to learn about.
You know a lot about it though
No,
already.
I don't.
Oh yeah.
I know a lot about the equipment they use.
Yo,
I don't know.
That's a start.
I
That's
don't
a
know
great
anything
start.
about the rest.
This-
You're
like,
down on yourself.
No, I'm not. I'm being real and honest.
No, I think if you worked at it, I think
Yeah, but no. That's the thing. I'm not going to respiratory school for doing something I'm not interested in.
That's
Well,
fair. That's a completely fair point.
I never said you were interested. I just was saying that out loud.
Yeah, but
Basically.
I know a little bit about the respiratory system from learning about like anatomy, but it's not like how.
you have chauffeur knowledge.
Yeah.
and
There's
I know
two
the,
types
I know
of
the
knowledge.
equipment they use. That's it.
There are two types of knowledge. I listened to this on a podcast like a couple of years ago. Now, maybe a couple months ago. But there's two types of knowledge. And there's this guy, his name's Max Planck, and he talks about astrophysicist shit all the time. He goes to like college campuses and lectures. At some point, he did like 365 lectures in a year. Every day he went
That's a
to a
lot of
new
lectures.
university. And his chauffeur would drive him around and listen to every single lecture. And one day out of like after the 365 days, the chauffeur is like, yo, Max, I think the guy's name's like Max Planck. He's like, Max, what do you say I go up there and I give the lecture? And he knows it all. He can tell all the information again. Like Doc hangs out at respiratory therapists all the time at his job. He hangs out with them and he knows what to do and what's going on. And so anyway, so the chauffeur gives the lecture and then a student raises his hand and says, yeah, what is like the meaning of space or whatever the fuck he asked the guy. And the chauffeur is like, oh, hold on. Let me get that answer to you from my chauffeur, Max, and he'll give you the answer. But that's like the point of the whole conversation is that you can just learn all this knowledge from, like, Chris could tell me all day long that 500, I don't even know. He could tell me a fact all day long, and he could have the most immersed knowledge into it. He knows it 100%. He could read it all the way through and answer any question you have. But I just know, like, the base level.
Basically, you're able to regurgitate information that you read.
But you
pretty
don't know
much.
why what is what.
Right. Rather than having a deep, thorough knowledge of what it is.
Shit's crazy.
Well, that's a difference between memory and conceptualizing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like if I was to tell you guys, you know, you should squat below parallel because it's better for your knees. But if you were to ask me why, I would have to refer you to some guy who,
Like a scientist.
yeah, a guy who's like versed in kinesiology and shit. Like
You
know?
could,
A
Ryan.
little bit.
or as an alternative, you could say, listen, that's actually a great question. I don't know if I have somebody here to help you, but I can look into it, and then you could do the research yourself.
But that's the whole thing though. Like everybody has one or the other, or you might have both of them. Realistic? No, actually, no. You only have one or the other. You only have chauffeur knowledge or Max Planck knowledge about one specific topic at a time.
It's interesting.
That's cool though. So how was your week, Rock? You didn't tell us. I think I realized that recently. Like when you introduce us, do you tell us how you're doing?
I'm chilling, man. I live one day at a time the best I can.
Okay.
I do have a problem of overthinking. I do think way down the road sometimes. You know, like week after week trying to plan and build for my future. But in terms of anything I can do right now, it's just one day at a time, grinding.
I think that's the way to do it. I try to live my life like half an hour at a time. Like I'll sit down and do something and think about, am I going to be doing this in a half hour or not?
Actually,
Kinda go from there.
you guys want to go around real quick? I have an interesting question because I seen this on TikTok.
Sorry, excuse me.
Does anyone want to go around one at a time? And it might not even be the best. It could be just one of the best, but some of the best advice you ever gotten that sticks with you to this day.
Skip me.
No one's ever given you like a good piece of advice that just stuck with you.
No.
Yes, they have.
God, Doc.
I gotta think now. I mean, definitely someone has given me advice.
This isn't the best for me, but because you were just talking about living a half hour at a time, so it sparked this for me.
I can go into why I say that.
I had a boss once. Again, this is at my job at Mass Mutual, and this would actually play into your kind of field, especially, and when you were doing teaching too. You need to have a short memory, and what they mean by that is like, if you were to remember everything, you're going to be people who want to get better are super hard on themselves, and the emotions come crumbling down on you.
You know what's funny?
But when you have a short memory, you're just like, all right, I got to move on to the next opportunity, and then boom, and then after that's done, all right, move on to the next opportunity.
What's funny, man?
I'd probably say that about like 5 times a day at baseball.
Got to have a short memory,
And in sports, you have to have
especially in
short memory.
baseball. Especially in
Yeah.
baseball.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the whole point of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You can't you can't worry about your last strikeout.
Baseball's a very
On to the next
That
at
is,
bat.
I'm gonna say the same thing. Like it's the same advice that I was given to me, and it's literally saying the same thing. You can't think about where you were, where you're gonna be. Like I think I said this already on the podcast, however many episodes ago. But the most important place to be right now is where your feet are. You can't think about where you were last month, where you were 6 months ago. You shouldn't think about where you want to be in 12 months or 6 months forward. Like the most important place you can be is right where your feet are. And that's just it. It goes for anything. Of course, you always have your goals that you want to meet and, however your past went. But right now is the most important time.
I will openly admit I get on my biggest like emotional outbursts of like frustration or like being upset when I try to rush my future goals. Like try to condense it down to man, like I should have owned the house by now. I'm 25.
Yeah, that's a very common thing that I think that we have to overcome.
You shouldn't compare either.
Just comparing and just thinking of like the old school way of thinking. By 25 you should be married, 2 kids, and have a home. That whole concept to me is just so old school, in my opinion. So that's something that I try to distance myself from, because I think everybody's different, and I think that people that grew up around the time where all of our parents did, that was the way of doing it. You get a job. Most of them didn't even go to college at that point either. So it's like you're out of high school by 21. You have a career basically, and then by 25, married, 2 kids, home.
I got a lot of beef with some boomers, man. They're probably like my mom told me the other day, like, oh, you should just stick it out. Like, no, mom. Like, why? Why would I subject myself to that?
Yeah,
Right? Just some of the old school thinking points, like Chris is saying, it's just like, why do you guys want that?
a lot of that kind of stuff is just outdated, really. I think so, at least. And I mean, I think today there's just so many different ways to make money, and I think there's so many different ways that you can basically structure your life without having to have it be such an old school, this is the way to do it kind of thing.
You know what I think a lot about? Like, are we going to change that? Like, who changes that? How many years
We
does
do.
that
Oh,
change?
absolutely.
It's like, what if we lived in Game of Thrones time and I was 14 years old and they're like, why aren't you married yet? You know, and then
Yeah.
eventually people were like, no, that's fucking weird. Don't do that. Get married when you're 17 instead and have a kid by 18. And then now, like we're saying,
Like,
our
don't marry
parents
your
are
cousin.
like, why are our parents are like, you're 23 years old, you got to get a girlfriend and a wife and a house in the next 5 years. Like, no, like, fuck off.
Think about how crazy that's involved. Like, so I don't know. I'm just
Like,
thinking.
who makes that?
I'm just thinking of this as a movie or just historical times, just to put it in people's head. But like, think of the movie 300, right? Like, if you were a Spartan soldier and you were just a kid that said, "I'm just not going to go to war. This isn't my thing," they would just throw you down a well.
Yeah, and like, how many of them did it take? Like, how does it take a whole generation, or does it just take like one fire starter? I mean, what if I got so crazy and I started marching down Times Square and telling people I'm not getting married and having kids till I'm 50? Am I gonna have followers?
Yeah, I would follow you.
No, but you know, like
Probably.
that's kind of a crazy. Well, it might seem crazy. Who knows? Maybe it might not be crazy in 25 years or something.
I think
Really, I just think that there shouldn't be. It's almost like there's like a restriction. Like if you don't have a house and kids and married by 25, like what are you doing?
Yeah,
basically?
like what?
Which is that's not right. Because how many people our parents' age worked 20 different jobs and didn't have their life figured out right away, but they thought they did or tried to force that? That's where the problem comes in, because then, like you said, you could be at a job where you're not happy, you don't like what you're doing, but you're getting paid and you have a house, but like you go home, you're miserable every day.
Let's talk about someone like Daniel Cormier, a UFC fighter, one of the most decorated of all time, light heavyweight champ, however many times, beat the best ever heavyweight champion, however many times. He didn't start his fighting career in the UFC until he was 30 years old. And everyone says that is so cool. Like, he's so awesome. He started his career late. Usually UFC fighters start when they're 20, 15. They start with a wrestling background. And they love it. It's like such a good story. But then if I was to go and turn around and tell everybody in my community that I'm not going to start my life until I'm 31 years old, they would be like, are you fucking nuts?
Well, that's why it's a very important to, dude. You always hear this in songs, like make sure you stay silent. It's all right to stay low. Just keep your moves on the low, like stuff like that. Like if you know your plan and you have the experience to be confident of your plan, then just go do it. But you have to be willing to accept those blows. I've learned that because, like for example, like when I bring up this job consistently all the time, but when I switched my career to financial planning, you know. What the hell were we just talking about? I just lost my train of thought.
You got to be kidding.
No. What were we just? What
I don't
was-
know. You
starting
seem like
your
you're
life in-
gonna.
Well, what were you? Oh, starting your life at 31, right?
I'm saying, yeah.
Right. So like when I made that career change, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So when I made that career change, you know, there were some people where I got looked at with cross. Like you said, you were going to be a teacher for 4 years, like, and then you just switched like right after you graduated for teaching. And I was like, well, I want to try it. Like, there's a lot of changes going on right now. Like, what's wrong with trying something? I mean, experiences fall into that too, but you got to be confident in your path. You're always going to be. People love negatives. People love controversy, and it's just always going to play into your life when making a huge decision like that.
Dude, I don't know. I
agree.
know. I'm pretty sure you and Doc Rocco didn't watch the Kanye West documentary, but if you guys were to watch the first episode, like I've never seen someone in a documentary or even in my own life that believed in themselves that much. So this is the story.
No, never.
He lives in Chicago. He learned how to rap and make beats at like 14, 15 years old. And-
Primarily beats at first.
yeah.
Though.
So the whole gist of the first episode, he believes in himself so much. He's making beats. He finds out you're either in LA making rap music or you're in New York City making rap music. He takes his whole life, doesn't even see the apartment he's moving into in Newark, New Jersey, picks up his whole life and goes there. And then he somehow gets in contact with Jay-Z, one of the biggest at the time, and Kanye West produced basically the whole album. And he was saying he was just barging in on studios, going in there. You guys have to listen to this. You have to listen to this. Can you imagine?
Well, people see
Like
now.
believing in yourself that much?
So that's what I mean. And I was talking about this earlier before we podcasted too. Who was the celebrity that we just brought up where we were talking about the actors?
Andrew Garfield, Charlie Cox,
Mhm.
and Robert Pattinson all lived in the same London flat when they were starting their acting careers, and they were all Well, Andrew Garfield and Charlie Cox. Sorry, this is spoilers if you haven't watched Spider-Man already. Whatever.
Spoiler alert.
So Andrew Garfield and Charlie Cox are in Spider-Man, one of the highest-grossing films of all time. Robert Pattinson turns around. Obviously, he was in Twilight. Not that big of a movie, to be honest, right? It's not. It's
Bigger than
indie.
books.
It's indie compared to some
Yeah.
of these other movies coming out. He gets in Batman. He's in the top-grossing film of all time for box. Like he beat Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Shit like that. And they just all lived in this small flat. And then now they're there.
I bring this up all the time. Like, there's so many times you hear that being tossed out where celebrities are not because they have all this money. Like, what are they to be stressed about? Well, you can go into, like, their relationships with family, friends, portfolio, their all that stuff. But also, leading up to that point, they had to grind. Like, if they were actually in the hotel, there's probably a huge chance that they were buying, like, ramen noodles and, like, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the first 2 years of their lives. You know what I mean? Or like you hear Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban said he lived off of ketchup and mustard sandwiches. Like, that's crazy. And like people were like, yeah, he's just got all this money. Well, he did that by accepting the blows. He did that by keep going and having faith in it because he had a true plan the entire time. He knew what he was doing. He didn't have to explain himself to everyone. You remember that in Moneyball, Doc. You don't need to explain yourself.
That movie's fake now that we like.
That movie's not
talk
fake.
about it.
There's a
Oh,
lot of
no.
life lessons in Moneyball you got to take, man. Stop feeling like you have to explain yourself because you don't.
Mark Cuban is a very smart man. And I'll tell you what, I've listened to multiple podcasts with him, and you could just tell by the way that some people talk, just the way they articulate words and the way they portray their thoughts, you could just tell that they're a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell Mark Cuban is a genius after listening to him for 10 minutes. You're like, this guy's a fucking genius.
Mm-hmm.
And someone like that, they're just destined to make an impact
do you know
in the
when
world.
he stopped caring about money?
Mark Cuban?
Yeah, like
What is there, a date and time?
not
Like,
not
what
not
do you mean?
necessarily a date and time.
Like his timeline.
More
Just say
so,
it.
just like when someone asked him, he's like, when did you like just stop caring about money? He goes, when I hit $1 billion.
Oh my God.
Like, think about that.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, I hit $1 billion, and I was like, okay, whatever. I don't care anymore about the money. Let's just like go help businesses and like find the next cool thing
Mhm.
to help them get their feet up.
That's a big reason why they say like nice people don't make money because nice people hear these blows and they get emotionally affected by them.
But like, think about that. Like, he made $100 million. He was just like, nah, I need to make another $100 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He could have. He could have
You
never.
got to be different to do that, to say the least. It's crazy. I don't know. But either way, basically going off what you're saying, I feel like he's a hard example because he is very clearly a genius, probably a super genius. You know what I mean? For everyday people like us, and I don't mean that in any kind of offensive way. Like we're some regular guys.
We're average Joes at best. I
But why
mean, come
why
on.
do you guys label yourselves as that though?
I mean, we're doing a podcast in a basement right now. But hey, it could be us. We could be the
Where-
next
where
Andrew
did-
Garfield and
Yeah, we're not.
Where did
we're
Steve
not-
Jobs
we're not
start?
saying that we
Steve Jobs.
can't.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Or Bill
Hold
Gates
on.
and his
You know,
partner?
Hold on. Let me explain myself. So, Mark Cuban, you're going to use Steve Jobs as an example.
Well, I'm
He
doing,
started in
literally-
his garage.
Yes, but he is a genius.
I'm way better than Steve already. I'm alive.
That's true.
good point.
But I'm not saying that you're not smart. I'm not smart. Earl isn't smart. Doc isn't smart. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they had the ability to create something that basically no one else could. We might have that and haven't discovered it yet. Personally, I don't. So,
Yet.
I might. I might be able to create the next who knows what. Apple. You know what I mean? Probably not, but basically it's you. We know what our skill sets are, right? You know what your skill sets are, and you work off of them, right?
I think that's a bad mindset. I think I can always expand my skill sets.
You can. Absolutely you can. But for the time being,
At this
you
moment
know,
in time.
you know what you're good at. I know what I'm good at, and that's what I want to do and what I want to build off of. So basically what I'm saying is that it's hard to use someone like Mark Cuban as an example of like a success story. Like I think using the
He was a
example of
He was a full-time college student who opened his own bar and who went through studying and opened up his own bar because he grinded. And he said,
Yeah, it's doable.
which is opening a bar. That wasn't really anything like that's where it started all.
Right.
And then he was intelligent enough to come up with a company that he sold for, I forget the amount, but he always says it all the time in Shark Tank.
Yeah, like 100 million or whatever it was,
But
give
like-
or take, right? So
But like would he have led into that when he was opening his bar, going through the blows, going through studying, people telling him like, oh, like, you know, you're gonna leave your bar to start this company?
right, but he had that vision of the company that he was smart enough to create the whole business plan and grow it to be worth 100 million, right? Like I'm not capable of that. Just to be completely honest, I don't have an idea that's revolutionary enough to build a company that's worth $100 million. I
Yeah.
just don't. Yet.
But I
It's
think,
going to happen, I think, eventually.
We need
I'll
to
think
figure
of
out
something,
what's
but
going to be in 20 years from now. That's what I always think about how they all did that, but they were so ahead of their time. They were thinking 20 years. Okay, this thing is going to be like
they're just
make
super
me $100 million.
geniuses.
We have to
Right.
come up with that, and that's hard to do.
Because if everyone could do it,
Everyone would do it.
And I'm not trying to knock us by any means.
Oh,
I mean,
no,
we all have our own talents and skills
We're-
that we can use
we're
to.
not possibly saying, Rock, like we all fucking suck at life and we're never going to be anything but make our $50,000 a year and live in our $100,000 home and that's our cap. But as far as like, I see what both you guys are saying. Rocker's saying, don't
limit yourself.
yeah,
right?
don't limit
like,
yourself. And I see what you're saying
which
at
I
the same
completely
time.
understand.
right, like he's
Yeah. You don't want to put yourself in a box, and Rocco doesn't want us to do that for ourselves.
But I do truly believe that if I had shut down all my relationships as a financial planner and was truly just a brute with that job loyally, that I could have been making a lot of money. But I chose the emotional relationship aspect as a part of why I didn't want to continue with that career.
And that wasn't going to make you happy, right? Doing that. Like, that's not what you didn't have like a lifelong passion to do that for a living. You know what I mean?
Well, right. I tend to go towards more relations and families, but that's why I said there's that narrative that nice people won't make money because they get drawn into that life, which is an okay decision. He had to endure a lot of sacrifices while making those decisions. It's not just the intelligence. Like, I'm sure he emotionally went through it. I'm sure that there were a lot of changes in his life that had nothing to do with intelligence. It was more so just awareness.
Right. So you're saying basically all the decisions that he had to make leading up to him
Right.
leaving the bar or whatever to make the company. Is
Right.
what you're saying, right? Like all those decisions, yeah, they all might not have gone into him being a genius, but I'm just like, what I'm trying to point out, the fact is that he did all that in the back of his mind, had this brilliant plan to build $100 million business, which I don't. I'll say that. So you might.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yet. There's a lot of power in the word yet.
I agree.
You don't know what's going to happen.
What if you
next,
go?
though.
What if you go to baseball Tuesday and you just tell yourself, "I'm not really a good coach," but if you think about it and you just say that same sentence out loud and say, "I'm not really a good coach yet," think about how much different that is.
That's like a powerful statement.
There is so
It
much
is.
power in the word "yet."
Mm-hmm. I'm
There
not a
is.
millionaire yet.
I don't have an idea to make $100 million. And then it's like, damn, fuck. I don't have an idea to make $100 million yet. I hate college. I haven't graduated. I'm not going to graduate college yet.
How about it?
Ballbreakers
I like
doesn't
that.
have 1 million followers.
Yet.
Yet. Oh,
But that's what I'm saying, like-
that's a good one, Doc.
And I just realized this. I listened to Justin Sua's podcast. He's it's literally a 2-minute episode of listen to it and get your fucking day started. Whatever. I think he does it once a day. They're only 2-minute clips. He talks about something like this. I think he just talked about it last week. The power of talking to yourself and saying the word yet. The other day I'm working out. I'm doing this fucking awful CrossFit competition. And I'm like, man, I can't pick this barbell up. And then I said, damn, I can't pick this barbell up yet. And then, damn, pick it up. Like,
Throwing it over your shoulder.
just tell yourself, like, I'm not this yet. Or you could just tell yourself, I am this.
Chris, I agree with you in terms of there are freaks in nature. I just think people overshadow that fact too much without putting into the actual time. Like, for example, put a pinpoint here and then think about actually living out that year. You know what I mean? Now, like, put those people in that time, like, they had to make courageous decisions. Like, I think courage, like, just in my opinion, I think intelligence is a huge part of it, but you can have all that intelligence but make all the wrong decisions.
Right.
You know, like, you could, just because of what you believe in your intelligence, and you might have all factual knowledge, but your decision-making awareness towards everything isn't taken into account, because you have to look at each relationship whether he might sacrifice relationships with his family and friends and just moved away. You know, like that's something that we would have to decide if we wanted to take that step to have financial goals, probably. You know what I mean?
Most of the time, I mean, if anybody that successful, most likely didn't have many relationships, like throughout the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
At least not in the beginning while they were grinding, I would think.
no, I mean, if you're dedicating your life to something like that, that's your life, and that's it. There's no room for relationships.
Oh, there
And if there are, I mean, obviously I'm generalizing here, but most of the time I would say that their relationships are on and off, spotty.
I agree.
know,
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially if it's somebody that's making a ton of money, then it's just going to attract people that just want the money.
Right. Oh, yeah. And that's another, yeah, that's for sure
So,
part of it.
I mean, you have to make a lot of sacrifices if you want to live like that. And it's tough
Well,
to say.
Let's just say this: we're not all individual. Four guys here. We're not as successful as Mark Cuban yet. Doc's going to ask us a question to ponder. This segment is brought to you by 10,000.cc. If you use code Chavez15, you can save 15% off your first order.
Here we go, Doc.
So, would you rather be unable to use search engines or unable to use social media?
Social media.
Unable to use social media.
But then, I mean, if you could. No, you're right. Because you can't, like, ask a question on Twitter and it answer you.
Right.
So
You were talking.
I was thinking, like, if you go on a search bar on Twitter, you could probably find out, like, what is the meaning of an apple. But then
You could
can't
probably
really.
find a lot of information that you're looking for on social media, but I mean, it's a tough question, because also if you're trying to grow a brand, how are you going to grow it unless you have social media?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point.
But at
Especially.
the same time, if you're trying to grow,
You
Your
can also
knowledge.
search it up how to grow a brand without using social media.
Website.
you're going to just need a website.
But that is, like, a form of getting your. Like, that's a form of social
Yeah.
media.
What? Website? Website's not social. It doesn't.
Not if you have a brand website. That's not social media. It's just your website, right? Like,
I mean, is like having a podcast not social media?
That's
Technically
entertainment.
It is.
no, a podcast is social media. No, wait, is it though?
No.
Because when you think of social media, you got Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok. What else?
You should
Right.
give us a definition on social media. What does that entail?
Websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking.
Share content. Or,
Yes, this is a social media. We
Yeah.
are
Like we're on
sharing-
Spotify, for example. Spotify is social media.
I would assume so. I mean,
Well,
it
because
says
you
here,
can like and share content on Spotify.
You know what? I think it's because you can be a friend with like it's not just music and playlists. You can be friends
can
with somebody
have
see their
shared
playlist,
playlists
right?
and
But
things
then-
like that.
What happens if you get rid of that, right? What happens if
what
you
it
just
like
say,
a Walkman? Like if you just have a Walkman that plays a tape and you have earphones. But is that not social media when you listen to me?
No,
When
I
you
don't
listen
think,
to music?
I think us sharing content is not social media. I think somebody on Spotify sharing our podcast to somebody is what they mean by sharing content. I
No,
don't believe we're sharing content.
no, yes, but a podcast in itself is not social media. But you upload
Yes,
it
it
to
is.
social media platforms.
It's considered social media,
I don't think it is.
but it is. It's lumped into that whole social media. Like
That's kind of what I just said, but
So
you're just like
it's
writing
an-
me off.
Yeah.
It's
No, if
ambiguous. I mean, you could
we're,
say.
we're uploading our podcast to a social media site.
And let me just make this clear. If I was not able to use a search engine such as Google, I would never be able to even give you guys the answers to this question.
What's the first form of social media, just so we can have an example as to what it was? What was the first created form of social media?
It's probably like a newspaper if you think about it. If you think about it.
Online.
Oh, like online social media?
Like MySpace?
No, isn't no. Not like isn't Friendster before MySpace?
Or like Reddit? Wasn't Reddit around back then? Any
don't
kind of
know.
like chat rooms, right?
Omegle?
6degrees.com.
That was the first social media.
First social media site is born in 1997. That's what I have here. So
Right,
it is.
yeah,
It's a website.
96. What was
Yeah,
it?
but
96
it's
degrees?
something that you can interact with people. which is social networking.
So there's not really like a true like because if I just googled like is a podcast social media, like can podcast be considered social media? It can be defined in many ways. It's community, it's a broadcast channel, it's news. We give content, and then you could say that is the definition of social media. But
this is a tough one. It is.
I'm just gonna go with I'll get rid of social media. I'll use the search engine all day.
I agree. I'm gonna go with the search bar.
I'll go with the search engine because that way I can always look up Doc.
But then if you look up Doc, his Instagram comes up. You can't click that. That's social media, brother.
Me too. So to get rid of social media.
Is that what you were saying? Me too?
Yeah, I was pointing at the camera like me too.
Honestly, I just think social media is toxic anyway. The more I go on social media, the less I want to use it, but the more I realize like I'm addicted to it.
You know it's not toxic? Trivia. You guys ready for this week's trivia segment?
Yes.
All right, cool. Let's get it started. Let's transition it over to our host. Welcome to this week's BPP Trivia Night with your host, RJ Aquil. We have our contestants, Trop, Doc, and Earl. With this week's episode, we will see if Earl can be up 2-0 or if one of our other competitors can get their first answer correct. Let's continue. This week's question. What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea? Chris, you go first. I will preface this by saying, don't overthink it. It is a brand, you guys know.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question. What is the name of the biggest technology company in South Korea?
Okay.
Okay.
This is a tough one. I'm gonna go with
No gimmies here on BBP Trivia. We only give that hard trivia.
Sony.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
Doc.
Oh, I had one in mind, but Chris's answer switched me to. I'm gonna say Apple.
No way. Based in California, Samsung.
Japanese. Samsung's Japanese, I'm pretty sure.
The correct answer does begin with an S. And our winner this week, undefeated Earl, Samsung.
Is Sony Japanese? I thought Samsung was Japanese. I
I was
that
gonna
mixed
say
up.
Microsoft.
So I believe Sony is Japanese. I think you got the two switched up, but I'm not positive. I'm just speaking
I was
off
going to
that.
say Nintendo, but I'm pretty sure Nintendo is Japanese.
I think
Maybe
Sony,
that's what I was thinking of.
I think Sony is too because they have a lot of partnerships with Konami and like those gaming companies. So I think it is, but I don't want to say it for sure.
I don't know why I was set on the
Wait,
fact
no,
that.
Chris, Sony is from Japan. You're right.
Is that what
but
it
it's
was?
not from
Okay.
South Korea.
So Samsung is South Korean.
Yes.
So I got Samsung and Sony mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
Earl's a trivia god. What
That
are you
is-
gonna do?
2-0. 2-0-0. What are you thinking over there, Doc?
I'm thinking about how every time we buy a mirror, it's used.
Where was what? Why were you thinking about that?
It just came to my head. I don't know. Every time you buy a mirror, it's used. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That was what was on my mind in that moment.
Dude, you know what that made me think of? This thought I had at one time is
Jesus Christ.
that whoever invented the trash bag is the biggest con artist of all time. Think about that. Because you put your trash in a can, right? Like, why do you need a bag?
Oh, I could you to not have the food.
No,
on the
no,
track.
I get all of that, right? But there was... I also haven't looked into this, but I'm assuming at some point there was just a can, and then you just throw the trash in there.
I
So
don't,
then someone came along and was like, hold on, I'm going to make a bag. But at the same time, you could get the same effect of a trash can without the bag.
I don't think you
I don't
guys.
know.
I don't
It's
think you
just-
guys are. I don't know why we glossed over this. You buy a piece of furniture, you assume it's new. You buy a mirror, it's not.
It's not.
It's used.
It's used every single time.
Holy shit!
Not unless they made it from the back.
No, it's
Nah.
okay, and I'm sure someone walked by it. Guess what?
Right, I guess in the
That
store,
mirror is
right?
used.
Yeah.
Someone
yeah,
had to look at it. Yep.
Right. Right.
Whoever
Okay,
made
you're
the
right.
mirror, guess what?
Unless you make your own mirror.
I was just trying to think of any scenario that mirror wouldn't be used. but it's always used. It's
Think of
always
yeah.
gonna
I
be
mean,
used.
they make it from the back
Yeah.
and still show in reflection to
Of another like
fucking
mirror.
spider on the wall. Who knows that motherfucker used your mirror?
Earl,
You know
wanna-
what else freaks me out is that mirrors are made from sand.
You want to close this
Did you
out
know
this
that,
week?
Ryan?
No.
Dude, I've just wow. It's just crazy. Listen, this has been my theme all episode. If you're unhappy, don't be. We were talking about it. This whole episode, believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, put your chips in your own pile. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You don't have to grab your friend's chips and make them look like yours. You need to get your own.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do your own shit. Somebody believed in an almond enough to milk it. You can believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Somebody once put sugar, flour, and eggs together and made cookies. You know.
And they believed it. Well, Kanye West, he fucking bullied Jay-Z around until he played his mixtape, and boom, he might be the best modern artist of our time. He is, actually. There's really no arguing it. There really isn't. Nobody has influenced the world that he has with his platform. He's an artist in music. He's an artist in fashion. He does it
He's
all.
also a politician,
He
apparently.
ran for president once. He might do it again, but believe in yourself like Kanye does, man.
Before we close out, Doc, what's that piece of advice that's good for us? What do you tell your players? We talked about it earlier.
Jesus. Oh, I have a short memory.
Gotta have a short memory.
Oh,
See,
man,
and
I
you
was-
just exude it.
I was
You had your short
confused.
memory.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
What's the
Look at that.
definition?
I was confused.
In one ear, out the other, man. Right?
I mean, I tell my players a different thing a lot, but
Gotta have a short memory. Keep your eye on the ball. Everybody, have a great Monday.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.